I never imagined walking out that door would feel like stepping into freedom, and knowing he'd think it was a defeat. The apartment, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, now smelled of cold coffee and stale resentment. Every photograph on the walls seemed to mock me, reminding me of the life I thought we had, the life he promised, but never delivered. He stood there, arms crossed, eyes sharp with judgment, as if I were the one committing some unforgivable crime. I had loved him fiercely, believed in him, and trusted him with my entire heart. Now that trust lay shattered at my feet. The man I married, the one I thought would protect me, had become a stranger, his words sharp daggers in my chest. As I turned the doorknob, a mixture of relief and sorrow washed over me, and I realized this ending, bitter as it was also my first real step toward reclaiming myself. I sat on my bedroom floor, boxes stacked around me, feeling like I was dismantling not just a home, but a chapter of my soul. "Are you sure about this?" my best friend asked, her voice trembling as she held my hand. I nodded, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "I need a fresh start, somewhere I can breathe again." My parents had called, begging me to stay, warning that leaving everything familiar was reckless. I loved them, but their words felt like chains I was desperate to break. Every photograph, every book, every trinket reminded me of what I had lost, and of him. My mind swirled with fear. What if I failed abroad? What if I never felt at home again? And yet, a small spark whispered that freedom, real freedom, might lie in this unknown city, far from all the whispers, judgments, and memories. I hugged my friends tightly, swallowing tears, knowing that stepping onto that plane would be both terrifying and liberating. The plane touched down, and the hum of the engines faded, leaving me with nothing but the city's unfamiliar rhythm. Every street, every cafe, every crowded sidewalk felt like a blank canvas I could finally paint myself onto. I rented a small apartment with sunlight spilling through tall windows, a space that smelled faintly of possibility rather than betrayal. I walked the streets, practicing introductions, rehearsing who I wanted to be, imagining a version of myself unburdened by his shadow. Yet, even in this freedom, his memory lingered, his voice in arguments, the way he smiled condescendingly, the moments I had doubted myself. At night, when I unpacked another box, curiosity gnawed at me. Was he happy? Did he find someone to replace me? Someone who fit the image he always demanded? I forced the thought away, knowing it was poison, but a small flicker of anticipation, both dread and relief, kept me tethered to the idea that my past was never fully behind me. I was scrolling through my feed one evening when a post caught my eye. A friend tagging me in a photo of a glittering ballroom, a wedding cake taller than I'd ever seen, and my ex's face plastered with an almost unbearable smugness. At first, I tried to scroll past, pretending it didn't matter, that I was above caring. But my thumb froze, and I couldn't help reading the caption, "The most extravagant wedding of the year. Congrats, J&L." I felt a strange cocktail of emotions, detachment, curiosity, and a flicker of vindictive satisfaction I didn't want to admit. Who was this bride, and how had he managed to craft such a spectacle while I was building a life from scratch? A tiny, almost guilty grin crept across my face. Part of me wanted to look away, to focus on my new start, but another part, darker and sharper, thrilled at the thought of watching all that glitter unravel. Every post, every story I scrolled through painted a picture more ridiculous than the last. The venue was a gilded palace with crystal chandeliers dripping like frozen waterfalls, the floors polished until they reflected the guests' designer shoes. The bride's dress was a masterpiece, layers of silk and lace cascading in a way that seemed to mock the modest gowns I had once imagined wearing in our better days. Even the guest list read like a who's who of society, people who had sneered at me when I had nothing to show but hard work and scraped together ambition. I remembered how I had once been dismissed at his corporate parties, how my modest contributions had been ignored while he flaunted wealth that wasn't mine. Now, every gold detail, every champagne fountain, felt like a personal insult, a display of excess that I had never been allowed to enjoy. My heart sank, and a quiet fire ignited. Envy mixed with a dangerous curiosity. How far would this glittering show crumble, I wondered, and would I get to watch? The photos and stories online started to change, cracks I hadn't expected. A vendor complained publicly that the floral arrangements weren't paid for. The caterer was delayed, and a friend posted a shaky video of the bride whispering furiously into her phone. "He promised it would all be perfect," she muttered, pacing the gilded hall, eyes darting to every corner. "I can't believe this is happening." I felt a twinge of unexpected empathy. Anyone planning a wedding knows how fragile it can feel, but it was laced with tension, knowing that perfection was what he always demanded. Arguments flared in snippets I could see. "You told me everything was on schedule." "I did, but you never handled the payments." Even from afar, I could almost hear the hum of embarrassment building, each misstep magnified by the glaring social spotlight. My stomach twisted at the thought of public humiliation, and I couldn't help imagining the moment this glittering show might collapse completely. My phone rang late that night, the screen flashing an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, a strange premonition knotting my stomach. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. On the other end, a trembling voice broke through. It's, it's the wedding. Everything's falling apart. I don't know what to do," she stammered, almost crying. I froze, incredulous that she, his bride, was reaching out to me. Part of me wanted to laugh, to let her hear every detail of the life I was building while theirs spiraled, but another, quieter part, the part that had learned restraint the hard way, held me back. I listened as she rattled off vendor failures, missing decorations, and his growing panic, her voice laced with fear. My mind raced. Do I intervene, offer guidance, or stay detached, and let karma take its course? A mix of curiosity, temptation, and moral responsibility churned within me, leaving me on the edge, gripping the phone, knowing this call could change everything, and yet uncertain which side of the line I should step onto. I took a slow breath and let my voice stay steady, even as her panic rattled through the line. "Okay," I said softly. "Let's break this down. What's gone wrong first?" She hesitated, then began listing the small disasters: the florist missing half the orders, the band refusing to play, the seating fiasco. I listened, asking measured questions, offering small suggestions, careful not to overstep. With each word, I felt a quiet power settling over me, a sharp contrast to the chaos she described. Her voice wavered, revealing cracks I hadn't expected. Exhaustion, fear, and regret bleeding through the frantic facade she'd presented online. Meanwhile, my mind wandered to him, my ex, who had always thrived on control, now powerless to fix what he had built for show. I felt a strange satisfaction, tempered with empathy, as I realized that composure and clarity had become my weapons, subtle but undeniable, while their glittering world threatened to collapse entirely. The day of the wedding arrived, and the tension I had sensed over the phone erupted into chaos. Guests whispered, cameras captured trembling smiles, and I watched the live feed with a mix of disbelief and morbid fascination. "Where is the cake?" someone shouted, voice echoing through the grand hall. The band hadn't shown, and a table of expensive flowers had toppled, petals strewn across the polished floor. The bride's voice cracked as she shouted into her phone, I told you it wouldn't work." My ex's face was pale, his posture rigid, his usual arrogance crumbling in real time. Every argument, every falter, every luxurious prop failing felt like a public reckoning, amplified by shocked onlookers and social media commentary. I could feel the satisfaction twisting in my chest, not cruel, exactly, but deeply cathartic, as I watched the life he flaunted so proudly unravel, each moment of embarrassment delivered like a sharp, undeniable verdict. By the next morning, the chaos had gone viral. Friends, colleagues, and distant acquaintances shared videos of his flustered face, the toppled decorations, and the bride's frantic shouting. Comments piled up, mocking, sympathetic, incredulous, and I read them with a quiet sense of relief. My ex's ego, once untouchable, was shredded publicly, his carefully curated image collapsing under the weight of his own arrogance. I didn't need to gloat or intervene. I simply watched, letting the universe deliver the reckoning he'd so often avoided. Meanwhile, my life unfolded steadily. Calm mornings, work I loved, evenings filled with laughter and small joys. The contrast was stark. Chaos versus composure, humiliation versus quiet dignity. For the first time in years, I felt untouchable, not because of wealth or spectacle, but because I had reclaimed my life and refused to let his failures define me. Late at night, I found myself drifting into memories of our marriage, the laughter that once felt endless, the whispered promises that now rang hollow. I remembered the long nights he dismissed my dreams, the small humiliations that piled up until they became unbearable, and the subtle ways I had lost myself trying to fit into the life he wanted. But I also remembered the lessons I hadn't realized I was learning: resilience, patience, and the courage to walk away. Here, in this new city, I had built a life that was entirely mine, messy, imperfect, but authentic. I could cook what I wanted, decorate as I pleased, make decisions without fear of judgment. Nostalgia tugged at me, sweet and bitter all at once, but it no longer held me hostage. I had endured heartbreak, betrayal, and isolation, yet each loss had propelled me toward growth. And in that growth, I discovered a strength that I hadn't known existed, a quiet, enduring empowerment that the world, and certainly my ex, could never touch. A few weeks later, my phone buzzed again, this time with a message from her. Short, hesitant, and almost vulnerable. I need your advice. I don't know how to fix this, and I realized you handled things with a grace I could never manage. I stared at it, a slow smile spreading across my face. The woman who had once seemed untouchable was now reaching out, seeking guidance from the person she had assumed was irrelevant. I responded carefully, offering perspective, support, and calm solutions, feeling a quiet thrill at the reversal of roles. My ex was nowhere in sight, his pride still scattered among the debris of his failed spectacle. I felt triumphant, not in malice, but in the serene knowledge that my patience, composure, and emotional intelligence had placed me above the chaos. Karma, subtle yet undeniable, had delivered its lesson, and I was finally free to watch it unfold from a place of confidence, wisdom, and satisfaction. Word spread quietly at first, whispers reaching old colleagues and mutual friends. She's thriving, she's confident, she's built a life they couldn't touch. Photos of my apartment, my achievements, and small but meaningful luxuries began circulating, each one a silent testament to the stability and happiness I had created. Invitations arrived for events I had once been excluded from, smiles and nods acknowledging a person they had underestimated. Meanwhile, my ex remained a cautionary tale, his attempts at glamour and control exposed as hollow. The contrast was undeniable. I, calm and composed, had risen above, while he floundered in the ruins of his arrogance. FOMO tugged at those who watched, and moral satisfaction swelled in me as I realized the power of quiet resilience, self-worth, and patience. I didn't need to speak my triumph aloud. It radiated through every choice, every smile, every step I took forward. Sitting on my balcony one evening, watching the city lights flicker, I felt a calm I hadn't known for years. My life was full, work I loved, friends who cherished me, mornings and nights shaped entirely by my own choices. I thought of him occasionally, not with anger, but with quiet recognition that his chaos had played out exactly as it should. The failures, the public humiliation, the unraveling of everything he had flaunted. They were reminders that justice doesn't always need intervention. Sometimes it simply arrives. I had survived heartbreak, betrayal, and years of feeling small, and now I was thriving, whole, and unshakable. In that moment, I understood the truth. Strength isn't measured by revenge, but by the ability to build a life that no one, not even him, could touch. And as the wind carried the city's hum beneath me, I felt a profound peace, knowing that, at last, I was free, and everything else had fallen exactly into place.